Let's talk about how celebrities these days think a single Instagram post fixes everything. Like, honey, we've seen this playbook before, and when your PR team starts doing damage control at 2 a.m., well, that's when you know things aren't exactly going according to plan. The fog rolled in just before sunset, thick and white like cotton. The old lighthouse stood alone on the rocky shore, its paint peeling in long strips. Sarah watched from her bedroom window as the beam cut through the mist, wondering what secrets it kept. Cody Brown thought an apology tour would fix everything. After years of broken promises, favoritism, and emotional manipulation on sister wives, he suddenly stepped into the spotlight trying to clean up his image. But the moment he started speaking, it was obvious something was off. His words didn't land as sincere, they sounded rehearsed, self-serving, almost like he was campaigning for sympathy instead of owning up to the years of hurt he caused. And the person who saw through it most clearly was the one woman who lived under his control the longest, Christine Brown. Christine didn't just ignore his attempt, she tore it apart without even raising her voice. Her reaction wasn't fueled by anger or bitterness, it was grounded in clarity. She called out the behavior for what it was, a performance meant to rewrite history, and that single moment left fans buzzing, not because it was shocking, but because it was so real. Viewers who had watched Christine shrink, compromise, and second-guess herself for years were now seeing a woman who refused to play along with Cody's script. Hi friends, I'm Sophie, and this is Reality Scandals Daily. If you love raw, unfiltered commentary on the chaos behind reality TV, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop a comment to let me know your thoughts, because this one is a story that deserves to be unpacked together. From the very beginning of Sister Wives, Cody Brown painted himself as the glue holding a plural family together. He sold the dream of unity, sacrifice, and shared love. But once you watched closely, the cracks in that picture became impossible to ignore. Instead of being a fair and steady leader, Cody often positioned himself as the victim when things got tense, while subtly shifting responsibility onto his wives. Over the years, that pattern repeated so many times it almost became the rhythm of the show. One of the clearest examples was how he handled conflict. Whenever a wife voiced pain or disappointment, Cody would frame it as her being ungrateful, dramatic, or unwilling to embrace the family vision. He shielded himself from accountability by putting their struggles on their shoulders. Christine, in particular, often carried the brunt of this. Fans remember moments where she tried to express how isolated she felt, only for Cody to dismiss her concerns as jealousy or immaturity. Instead of acknowledging her reality, he cast himself as the misunderstood husband trying his best. The favoritism storyline also exposed just how much control he wielded. The dynamic with Robin shifted everything. Viewers saw him prioritize her needs, her children, and her comfort while expecting the other wives to simply adjust. It wasn't subtle, it was blatant. In one episode, he openly admitted that he preferred spending time with Robin because their relationship was easier. That confession landed like a gut punch for Christine, Mary, and Janelle, who had already been putting in years of effort to keep the family afloat. The favoritism became a silent weapon, pitting the wives against each other while Cody sat back, absolving himself of the tension he created. Fans also recall the catfishing scandal with Mary, which should have been a moment for Cody to show compassion. Instead, he distanced himself and shifted blame onto her loneliness, almost as if her seeking validation elsewhere was a personal betrayal against him rather than a cry for connection in a marriage where she felt invisible. Time and again, his response to conflict wasn't to repair but to protect his image as the central figure, the husband who had been wronged. This is why so many viewers find his recent apology tour impossible to stomach. It's not that Cody doesn't have things to apologize for, he does, and fans could list them for days. The issue is that history has shown his apologies rarely come from a place of genuine accountability. They've often been filtered through self-defense, designed to paint him in a softer light while quietly invalidating the very people he hurt. By the time Christine finally walked away, viewers had already seen enough of his patterns to know what would happen next. Instead of true self-reflection, Cody tried to repair his reputation, and for an audience that has been watching these dynamics unfold for more than a decade, the act was obvious. His words carried little weight because they weren't supported by years of action. That's the foundation for why Christine's refusal to play along hit so hard. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was exposing the hollow core behind Cody's carefully polished image. Cody Brown's so-called apology tour has become one of the most talked about chapters in the Sister Wives saga, not because it healed wounds, but because it exposed just how little had changed. After years of conflict and the implosion of his marriages, Cody suddenly stepped into the spotlight with words that sounded on the surface like remorse. But when fans leaned in and listened closely, the cracks were impossible to miss. His apologies weren't grounded in accountability, they were riddled with vague statements, subtle excuses, and plenty of self-pity. It felt less like a man truly reckoning with the damage he caused, and more like someone scrambling to salvage his reputation in front of the cameras. On the show, Cody's attempts often followed the same script. He'd start with lines about regret, acknowledging that things didn't turn out the way he hoped, but within seconds the focus would shift back to him, how hurt he felt, how misunderstood he was, how hard it was to juggle so many relationships. Instead of centering the pain his wives endured, he spotlighted his own suffering. That imbalance became the hallmark of his apologies. They weren't really apologies at all, they were explanations carefully crafted to soften his image while sidestepping true ownership of his behavior. Fans especially noticed the way he blurred responsibility. In one conversation, he claimed he was sorry if his actions made Christine feel unloved, language that puts the weight of interpretation on her instead of directly admitting, "I made you feel unloved." In another moment, he framed his failures as the natural outcome of plural marriage, almost as if the system itself, not his choices, was to blame. These aren't the words of someone facing their flaws, they're the words of someone trying to rewrite the narrative so that no single moment can be pinned squarely on him. It also didn't help that his delivery often carried a defensive edge. When pressed on specific issues, like the blatant favoritism toward Robin, he sidestepped by insisting that he was simply following his heart, or that he couldn't fake affection where it didn't exist. Instead of apologizing for the years of neglect Christine and the other wives felt, he doubled down on justifying why it happened. To viewers, this made his remorse feel hollow. A genuine apology requires humility, vulnerability, and a willingness to sit in discomfort. Cody's version was polished, detached, and oddly clinical, as if he were giving a press statement rather than speaking to the women he hurt. Promotional interviews outside of the show only reinforced this perception. When asked about the breakdown of his marriages, Cody leaned heavily on language about loss and tragedy, painting himself as someone enduring a great personal hardship. What he didn't do was directly confront the behaviors fans had been watching for years: the manipulation, the favoritism, the gaslighting. It was as if he hoped viewers had forgotten the receipts, when in reality the fanbase had been cataloging them in real time for over a decade. The reaction online was swift and unforgiving. Social media lit up with fans calling the apology tour fake, performative, and karma finally catching up with him. Reddit threads dissected his word choices, pointing out every dodge and deflection. On Twitter and TikTok, clips of Christine's calm rejection of his apologies went viral, with fans cheering her strength and mocking Cody's attempts to win sympathy. The overwhelming consensus was that his remorse wasn't for the pain he caused, but for the image he lost. What made this even more striking was how unified the audience felt. Sister Wives fans are rarely a monolith, but in this case the majority agreed. Cody's apology tour wasn't about healing, it was about damage control. And when you've spent years watching someone control the narrative, shift blame, and prioritize their own comfort, you can spot the performance a mile away. His words didn't ring true because they weren't supported by a history of growth. They were the same recycled excuses dressed up as contrition, and Christine's refusal to buy into it became the moment that turned his tour from a redemption attempt into a public unraveling. Christine quote, "Its rejection of Cody's apology attempts was not loud, not dramatic, and not theatrical. It was calm, steady, and razor-sharp, which made it even more powerful." For years on Sister Wives, fans had watched her shrink in the face of Cody's dismissive tone. Whenever she voiced her needs, he brushed them off as jealousy, immaturity, or a refusal to embrace the family vision. Those words stuck to her like labels, and for a long time Christine believed them. She internalized the idea that her unhappiness was her fault, that she wasn't strong enough to handle plural marriage, that she just needed to adjust her expectations. That was the manipulation at work. Cody never had to yell, his tactics were subtle but effective, and for years Christine carried that weight. So when he launched his apology tour, it would have been easy for her to fall back into old patterns, to hear his words and second-guess herself. Instead, Christine did the opposite. She held the line. She listened to what he said and recognized it for what it was. Another performance, another attempt to control the narrative without truly acknowledging her pain. Rather than feeding his need for validation, she refused to give him the reaction he wanted. Her body language, her tone and her refusal to let him reframe history spoke louder than anything else. Fans remember the moment Christine explained, in her own words, that she no longer trusted Cody. It wasn't just about a single argument or fight. It was about years of being dismissed, ignored, and told her perspective was wrong. She looked at his apology and saw the same patterns: vague regret, no accountability, and subtle blame shifting. And instead of questioning herself, she trusted her instincts. That's what made it such a turning point. For Christine, rejecting the apology wasn't about punishing Cody, it was about protecting her peace. The contrast between them was striking. Cody's tone throughout his apology attempts carried defensiveness. He tried to justify, to explain, to rationalize his actions. His words circled back to how hard everything was for him, how heavy the responsibility had been, how much loss he had suffered. But Christine's tone was calm, grounded, and matter-of-fact. She didn't need to raise her voice or launch into long explanations. She simply stated that she wasn't going to buy into a performance that didn't match the reality of her experience. That level of clarity was devastating for Cody, because manipulation only works when the other person doubts their truth. What makes Christine's rejection so compelling for fans is how personal it felt. Viewers had seen her earlier struggles, the tears, the insecurities, the moments where she compared herself to Robin and felt she could never measure up. They had seen her beg for more of Cody's time, only to watch him retreat into his favorite household. In those seasons, Christine carried so much self-blame, even apologizing for being too needy. To now see her look Cody in the eye and say, without hesitation, that she would not be drawn back in was like watching years of quiet suffering finally break open into strength. Her stance also resonated because it modeled something universal: the courage to call out performative remorse. Many viewers, especially women, recognized themselves in Christine's story, being fed half apologies, being told their feelings were overreactions, being made to feel like the problem. Christine gave language and validation to that experience by refusing to participate in Cody's act. In doing so, she not only reclaimed her own narrative, but also stripped his tactics of their power. By calmly dismantling the illusion, Christine flipped the script. For the first time, it wasn't Cody controlling the narrative, it was Christine holding the truth. She made it clear that she would not go back to questioning herself, not after the clarity she fought so hard to achieve. This wasn't bitterness, it wasn't revenge. It was simply a woman drawing a boundary and sticking to it. That boundary, more than any speech or confrontation, exposed Cody's apology tour as hollow. And in that moment, Christine showed the world that the strongest rejection isn't fueled by anger, it's fueled by self-respect. When Christine stood her ground and refused to validate Cody's apology tour, the reaction from the Sister Wives community was immediate and overwhelming. Social media platforms lit up, with fans rallying behind her in a way that felt less like casual reality TV commentary, and more like a collective cheer for someone who had finally broken free. For years, viewers had been shouting at their screens, watching Christine second-guess herself, and accept the bare minimum from Cody. Now those same fans were celebrating her clarity as if it were their own victory. The comment sections on TLC's official clips turned into support groups. Women wrote long posts about how they saw their own marriages mirrored in Christine's journey. Mothers, partners, and ex-wives poured in with stories of recognizing manipulation only after years of living under it. They connected to Christine's moment because they had lived versions of it themselves, sitting across from someone who offered empty apologies that never matched their actions. Seeing Christine reject the cycle so calmly gave them a sense of validation, as if she had spoken a truth they'd been waiting to hear. On Reddit, threads analyzing Cody's apology attempts grew by the hundreds of comments. Fans dissected his word choices, pointing out the hedges, the "if I hurt you" lines, and the excuses baked into every sentence. They compared notes like detectives, with many concluding that his apologies weren't about accountability at all, but about reputation management. One user wrote that Christine's silence in the face of his excuses said more than any speech could. Another pointed out that Cody's entire delivery lacked humility, which is why it fell flat. These conversations showed just how deeply invested viewers were, not just in the drama, but in the lessons the drama revealed. TikTok creators added fuel to the fire, splicing clips of Cody's so-called apologies with Christine's dismissals, turning them into viral soundbites. Some of the most popular videos framed Christine's stance as the ultimate example of no longer tolerating gaslighting. The hashtags filled with supportive messages, people celebrating her strength, mocking Cody's performative remorse, and labeling the whole tour as karmic payback. Fans weren't just entertained, they were energized. What made the response so powerful was how personal it felt. This wasn't about celebrity gossip in the way people discuss Hollywood scandals. This was about something bigger. Christine's refusal to be pulled back into Cody's performance touched a nerve because it highlighted a universal truth. Everyone knows what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a fake apology. Whether it's in a marriage, a friendship, or even at work, most people have encountered someone who says sorry, without really meaning it. Christine became a symbol of what it looks like to recognize that pattern and refuse to let it control you. The online celebration also flipped the balance of power in a way that was almost poetic. For years, Cody leaned on his ability to control the narrative inside the family, often dismissing or minimizing the voices of his wives. But now the collective voice of the audience drowned him out. Fans validated Christine in real time, offering her the kind of community support she had always been denied at home. That surge of solidarity turned her rejection of Cody's apology into something bigger than reality TV. It became a cultural moment about autonomy, boundaries, and the courage to walk away from manipulation. In the end, Christine's stance wasn't just a win for her. It was a mirror held up for countless viewers who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. By rejecting Cody's hollow apology, she reminded people everywhere that you don't have to accept words that don't match actions. That lesson resonated far beyond the screen, proving that sometimes the most meaningful moments on reality TV are the ones that feel the most real. For most of Sister Wives, Cody Brown held the reins of the family narrative with an iron grip. He was the one who decided what sacrifice looked like, who got his time, and how disagreements were framed. When tension flared, he positioned himself as the misunderstood husband trying to hold everything together, while his wives were portrayed as emotional or unreasonable. That control over perception was his power. It kept the wives second-guessing themselves, and it shaped how the audience initially viewed the family dynamic. But now the shift is undeniable. Cody no longer commands the story. He scrambles to defend it. The irony is striking. The man who spent years conditioning his wives to accept crumbs of attention, to believe they were at fault for feeling unloved, is now the one pleading for sympathy. The apology tour exposed a new kind of desperation. Instead of projecting authority, Cody looked like someone trying to cling to relevance as the women around him carved out their independence. What's even more telling is how ineffective his old tactics have become. When Christine stopped playing along, everything unraveled. The dismissive language, the blame shifting, the vague apologies, all of it lost its power the moment she refused to internalize it. Without Christine's participation, the manipulation collapsed. His strategies relied on silence and compliance, and when she chose neither, Cody was left exposed. Fans saw this collapse for what it was: the downfall of a man who built control on shaky ground. Christine's boundaries revealed that Cody's authority authority was never as solid as he wanted everyone to believe. It wasn't rooted in respect, but in fear and self-doubt. And once those dissolved, so did his grip on the family. What remains now is a man who once dictated the terms, suddenly facing the humiliation of having those terms rejected in public. And for viewers, that role reversal felt like long-awaited karma. Christine quote, "Is life after Cody looks nothing like the woman viewers met in the early seasons of Sister Wives. Back then, she was often the one bending, apologizing and absorbing the weight of Cody's neglect. Today she's stronger, freer and visibly thriving without the shadow of his control hanging over her. You can see it in her posture and her laugh, in the way she speaks her mind without hesitation. She's not trying to fit into someone else's vision anymore. She's living her own." What makes Christine's transformation so powerful is that it isn't just about moving on romantically or starting fresh in a new place. It's about the quiet strength of rebuilding a life rooted in self-respect. She's modeling for her kids and for viewers what it looks like to enforce boundaries and not compromise your worth for the sake of keeping a relationship afloat. Her daughters especially are watching their mother live out the lesson that love should never feel conditional, that respect is non-negotiable, and that walking away from manipulation isn't failure, it's freedom. Fans celebrate Christine not only because she left Cody, but because of how she carries herself after. She doesn't dwell on bitterness. She doesn't let Cody's narrative define her. Instead, she's shown joy in simple things, cooking, building traditions with her children, even laughing openly in ways that felt rare during her marriage. That happiness is contagious. It tells viewers who have been through similar struggles that life doesn't end when you walk away. It begins again. Her journey feels like karma unfolding in real time. For years, Cody used control to hold power, but Christine's choice to step out from under it didn't just free her, it exposed him. In doing so, she turned her personal transformation into something symbolic, a beacon for anyone who has ever questioned their right to demand better. Her story proves that strength isn't about enduring mistreatment, it's about refusing it. And that's why Christine's new chapter resonates so deeply. It's both personal victory and universal truth. Christine's refusal to accept Cody's apology isn't just a moment in her life. It's a statement for every woman who's ever been manipulated, gaslit, or told she wasn't enough. Her decision to hold firm, to recognize the pattern and to refuse participation in his performance resonates far beyond the walls of her home. It's about reclaiming power, owning your narrative and showing that boundaries aren't just rules, they're armor. Meanwhile, Cody's so-called apology tour collapsed spectacularly. The tactics that once worked, blame shifting, vague remorse and subtle control, failed the moment Christine stopped playing along. The man who built a career on directing how his wives should feel, act and respond now found himself exposed. What used to be a system of authority has now flipped, leaving him scrambling while Christine thrives. Watching that old playbook fall apart is both satisfying and revealing, a reminder that manipulation only works when someone allows it to. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Cody's apology attempts? Do you see them as genuine or just another strategy to control the narrative? And Christine, how powerful do you think her refusal really was? Not just for her, but as a message to the entire community of women who've seen similar patterns in their own lives. If you love getting the real, honest commentary on reality TV, you're in the right place. I'm Sophie, and this is Reality Scandals Daily. Make sure to hit subscribe, smash that like button, and comment below with your thoughts. Your voice matters, and I want to know what you think about this explosive showdown between Christine and Cody. This is just one chapter, but the lessons are bigger than the show. It's about truth, boundaries, and finally standing up for yourself. Let's talk about how celebrities these days think a single Instagram post fixes everything. Like honey, we've seen this playbook before. And when your PR team starts doing damage control at 2 a.m., well, that's when you know things aren't exactly going according to plan.